Alright, welcome back to weekly classes, quarter 2, week 2. This week we're working on our wall ball, and today we're actually going to finish up, go through a lot of what the normal maps, how to implement a normal map in 3D Studio, and sort of see it looking hopefully pretty cool. Alright, so day 1, we actually took the image from outside, the outside part of the school, and then we turned it into a tileable image, so it tiled 4 ways. Then yesterday, we took that original image, converted it to a black and white image, then inverted it so we had black as the inset color, and then we went and converted that into a tileable normal map. Just like that. Today, we're going to start off by talking about the maps in 3D Studio and how each map works. We're going to do that by sort of experimenting and looking at this model here. Okay? Now, this model here is a fish that I built for a game a while ago. Let's see here. 5. Alright. Oh, where'd it go? There we are. So there's a bunch of different maps we're going to discuss. Number 1 is diffuse maps. So diffuse maps are the actual color. So you'll notice in the fish, we've got this map back here. That's the actual color of the fish. So his orange skin, his metal silvery looking legs, his dark gray joints, his tentacle pieces here, the blue on his, I don't know, light up legs, all that sort of stuff is what he's doing. Now, the normal map is what gives him the bumps. So the skin, the actual scales on his skin are from the normal map. Alright, continue. So, let's go ahead and open him up. So right now, when we talk about the different maps, we're looking at, let's see, let's get that back up. Move him over here. Okay, so we've got the diffuse map, and we can actually see all of these maps on the fish by clicking our material editor and looking at the material itself. Right now, down here below, and once again, if you are looking at the slate material editor, this is what it looks like in there. If you want to swap the slate material editor to the compact, you just come up here to modes and go to compact. Alright, there we go. So let's actually look at the different layers. So first things first, you can actually change the color of this. I'm going to change it so I can rotate it around so you can see it a little better. So you can see all the bumps from the normal map that make up the skin. I'm going to convert this to a cube so you can see the map a little easier. So I'm going to turn off all of these other layers like self-illumination and bump so that you could sort of just see this image for just certain pieces at a time. So this is just the diffuse color. Without the diffuse color, it's just a brick. So the diffuse color is probably the most important map that we ever use because it gives us the actual color of the image. The next one is our normal map. Our normal map gives us, and that's under bump. And you'll notice you can set it to different levels. All of these can be set to different levels. So for the bump, you can adjust it. The higher the number, and it goes up to 100, the higher the number, the more deep the bumps will be, the more obvious they will be. 50 is good. Once you start getting in the 80s, it starts getting a weird edge to the bumps, and it starts being a little weird. But that's just kind of how it works. And let's see, we can actually render this guy a little better. So you'll notice that you don't see the normal map very well initially, but if you render it, oh, I need to swap renders, otherwise this will take too long. It looks better, but it takes too long. So you'll notice all the little bumps are actually created by the bump map. Without the bump map, you wouldn't see all these little edges on his scales that you see here. Alright? So I'm going to turn that off. I'm actually going to change my renderer by hitting F10, going to my render setup, down at the bottom, assign renderer. I'm going to change it just the default scan line. That way it renders much faster. Alright, there we go. So we've talked about our bump map, we've talked about our normal map and our diffuse map. The specular level. the specular level, if I double click this, I'm actually going to turn diffuse off. You can see the normal map, the way it looks. You can see it looks like little grooves in clay, right? I'm going to turn that off next. Now specular level determines how glossy something is. Right? It actually works in conjunction with glossiness. Glossiness actually is a little more like how wet something is. So right now all of our glossiness is, if our glossiness is set to a map, see how bright that highlight is? So that section right there is super bright and super wet. But this portion over here is much more matte. So if I use my specularity map for both of those. So when I render this, if I render it now, you can see that his eye is very, very wet and shiny, but his skin is far less so. You can also sort of see, if I render it again, the top part, this metallic piece of his, there's glass up here. If I adjust that, get in a little closer and render it, you can see that there's a portion here that's less glossy than the glass that's supposed to be on top. Same thing up there. The tentacle itself isn't quite as glossy as the glass, nor is it quite as glossy as the eye. So rendering specular level and glossiness, if I turn glossiness off and render it, you'll notice I get the difference in matte versus shiny, but it's not nearly as drastic. So often I will use the same for both and just make sure that I understand that gloss map is very, very shiny where I want it to be. Next is self-illumination. Self-illumination is basically a color setting. So, or not color setting, but it is a, no matter what, how dark things are, these pieces will glow. So right now I'm going to turn my diffuse back on. I'm going to try and render him from a darker edge. So there we go. So he's obviously got some light heading from that direction. Maybe this would be better. No, I like the other one better. Alright, so if I turn the self-illumination off and render him again, turn that there. So render, I'm going to turn it back on and render it. It's hard to tell, but it actually glows a little bit. Maybe we'll zoom in a little. You know what we can do? We can go in, take this light out, and so now he's really dark, and render him again. So you can see it glows. There's an actual glow to, oops, maybe too much. I'm going to have to use my zoom tool. There, render that. Alright, so you can see that it's actually giving off and lighting itself, even though there's technically no light coming from it right now. Zoom in. And it's pretty drastic, especially when in the dark. If you've ever played Gears of War, you can see on the back of Marcus Phoenix, which is the main character, he's got this armor that has some blue glowy bits, which seems like tactically it would be a terrible idea, but it looks really cool, so I'm pretty sure that's why they went with it. Because man, when something glows, you know, it's just like filled with electricity, and that's cool, super cool. So that is the self-illumination. Now I'm going to go back here in the diffuse color and render it again. So this is what it looks like when everything is fully opaque, which means you cannot see through it. Now down here is the opacity map. Okay, the opacity map is how opaque something is, and opaque means that you can't see through it. But if I take something like the, let's do the self-illumination. Oops. I'm going to take the emissive map, which is called self-illumination, the emissive map, and I'm going to drag it into the opacity. And I'm going to make a copy. When I do that, now what's going to happen is anything that was black in the opacity map, you're not going to be able to see. You're only going to be able to see things that were colored or white. In this case, it'll be only things that glow. So I'm going to render this, and that's all you get. You can't see anything. I'll back up. I'll do maybe from there. See, now I should be able to see his whole body and the bottom part of the fish, but I'm really only going to see this part here. See? I can't, if I turn self-illumination on, that's all I get, because the opacity map is hiding things out. So I'm going to clear out the opacity map. Alright, now render again so we can see them. And now, instead of that, maybe I'll use the glossiness map. Alright, the specularity map. I'm going to copy that and drag it into opacity. Now, it's a grayscale map. Okay, so copy. Okay, so now anything that was gray, let me see here. I can show you the map itself. YouTube files. I'm going to show you the map for the fish. Oh, no, it's not there. Yeah, let's do that. So you can actually see it in here. This is my specularity map. So the fins are black. Right, everything else is a gray, and the eyeball is white. Okay, because for the specularity, we wanted that to be really shiny, and we wanted the fins to be really dull. So, with that in mind, when I add that to it and render it, you're going to notice that the whole body is sort of see-through, except for things that were going to be really shiny. And the fins are basically gone, because we wanted those to be really sort of dull. You'll see it right there, so I'm going to render it. You can't see it at all. The opacity map is making it go away. So under opacity, under the opacity map, anything black is going to be hidden, or anything white is going to be see-through. Anything in between is going to be sort of see-through. Alright, cool. On we go. Bump map we've already talked about. And actually, let's get started on your bump map. Now, we've created those two materials earlier. We created the normal, so we've got the wall normal here, and we've got the wall tileable here. So we've done a lot of this explaining what they do. Let's actually do it. So I'm going to go up here and go new, don't save. I'm also going to reset. Yes. Alright, great. So I've got my cube, and we're ready to get started. First things first, open up your material editor. And now we are going to drag this right onto my material here. Now we can click on that and create a cube, but actually let's delete the cube because we talked about this. We're going to create a ball. So let's go ahead and create a sphere. Alright, you can just click and drag out a sphere, drag it up a little bit, move it around. Alright, good. So it's in the scene well. Now I'm going to drag this over to my cube. Oh, I forgot to go up and make sure it's seeable. There it goes. And we are going to render. Alright, I'm going to hit F10 and change my output to 1920 by 1080. And I'm going to hit Shift F so I can see this, because I want to make this nice and big so everybody can see it. I want to render it. Alright, so that looks good. That's our tileable texture. You'll notice you can spin all the way around this thing. Let's see if I can select something else. Oh, I've got edge faces on. I'm going to hide edge faces. Alright. I thought I was. I figured I still have it selected. Yeah, I think it's just default selecting it. Alright, cool. So now you can go all the way around this and you won't see any sort of edges. Right? You won't see any obvious seams because this thing tiles, right? Which is really nice. Okay, cool. So there we go. That's good. If we render it, it looks okay. Looks okay. That was kind of a weird angle. So let's render it again. There. Looks okay. You got some odd shading, I suppose, and it looks very flat. And it doesn't look very bumpy. Well, we're going to fix that right now. Let's go into render, so our materials. We've got our material here. We're going to go down to maps, right down here. Click on maps and go down to bump. We're going to activate bump by clicking it. We're going to go to none, click on that, and we can't just add a bitmap like we did before because the computer 3DS needs to know that we're going to be dealing with a normal bump. So come down here and click normal bump and click OK, or you could double click on it. Now that it knows what it's looking at normal map, now we can add the normal map, which is right here. So go ahead and click that, none, and we're going to actually add the bitmap to this. Click OK. I'm going to find our wall normal, click open. Alright, now it doesn't look like it did anything here, but when we render it, it still looks really flat. Well, the reason for that is the fact that we haven't really given it a lot of light to work with. So right now we're in the normal bump sub-object section. So go to the parent twice. This is the normal bump. Move up again, and we're back to our highest level. Scroll up here. Now, we haven't actually given it any light to reflect, any sort of specular level. So if you raise this up like that, maybe to like 80, let's go to 80. All right, you can render that out. Render. That still doesn't look so great, does it? You can start to see a bump there. You can start to see something. It's not enough. Let's adjust the glossiness a bit. I'll render that. There we go. That's starting to get good. It definitely looks better. Let's see. You can see the edge now. It's starting to look a little more like actually bumpy, especially in the lit areas where you're getting this hot spot from the reflection of the light. But what we need now is we need to make it a little more pronounced. So we're going to go back down here to maps and change the bump from 30 to, let's try 60. And render it again. Now, here we go. This is better. We're starting to get some more bumpiness here. You can actually see the gloss there on the edge of the brick. You can see the bumps and how the highlight of the light is actually giving off a sort of dappled reflection. Now we can actually do more of that in here. If you click on the normal bump, you can adjust the normal itself to like 2. You can render it again, and you can see it gets even a little more bumpy. And you can go up, and you can also adjust the bump itself up to like 100 and render it again. And you can see it gets even more bumpy. Once at some point though, it's going to start looking a little weird. It's not terrible here. It's just starting to look a little weird. Now if you didn't in day 2 we sort of Gaussian blurred everything, so it's a subtle, like a smooth bump. So it's almost like brick that's been painted over with a gloss. That's okay. I think you might be able to go higher, like something stupid like 500. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. Render that again. I'm hitting F9 to render. So that's getting really bumpy, but you're starting to get these weird, like, secondary shadows, and so I mean 500 is a little crazy. I usually find that the map itself around 60 I find is where I like it the best. But it's up to you. Go ahead and play with this. Actually, play with all of these. Get some black and white maps and start bringing them in. I can actually do that now. I'm going to do that with the opacity map. I'm going to grab a bitmap, and I'm going to grab this one. This is what I used. So now, if I render this under black, I'm going to see right through that thing. There you go. You can't really see behind it. I could if I put something behind it, which I will. Take this, hit W, I'll move that back there. Now zoom in and render. Alright, so I can see through it because the whole thing is sort of a gray color. If I had something even more drastic, I mean, you can see the bump too. The bump is going to cause confusion because you're going to be able to see through the bump. But like this gray portion here, so this is a white square, and this is a black square. So the bump is coming through. If I turn that bump off, it won't be quite as confusing. Where is it? Turn the bump off. Render it again. There you go. So you can see right through it. This is really, really useful. Opacity maps are fantastic for making things like leaves, because instead of creating a leaf that has all these tiny jagged edges, you can basically create a plane with, 2 tries and create an opacity map that will hide most of the rest of the plane, and it looks like you've just got 4 or 5 leaves there. That's how most trees are built in games today, by using that sort of layout. So, all right. So this is it, end of day 3. So the next project, you're going to need to actually use a bump map. So you're going to need to create a bump map, and we can create it easily, just like we talked about before. I can go into Photoshop. if I want to create something that's bumpy, I want to go ahead and go new. I think I already saved this, didn't I? I think so. I'll try and close it and see what happens. Yeah, I must have saved it. All right, great. So new, I'm going to make sure it's 1024 by 1024. And then I can do basically anything. I can take a grayscale image. So I can just pick whatever. If I want things to be super bumpy and drastic, I can have black on white. Click OK. Do some painting. So I can say, let's get this up there. There we go. So I can take this. Now I can just take this actual layer, go to Filter and Video Tools, Normal Map, Average RGB, click OK. Now I've got a normal map that will look bumpy. I can drag that onto just about anything. Alright, I just save out, it's good to go. And remember, it's all grayscale, so anything white is sticking out, anything black is going to stick in, or be inset. So it can save you tons and tons of time from making tiny little geometric additions to your model by just doing parts of it that are small and minute with a bump map. So I hope you learned something from this week. I look forward to your projects next week. Next week we're going to be doing another free project. It'll be just like Free 03. You'll have 2 weeks to work on it. So you're going to do weeks 3 and 4. You're going to create an actual object. And you're going to do it just like before. You're going to model it. You're going to get great concept art. You're going to model it. And then you're going to build it. You're going to UV it. You're going to create a diffuse map, except this time you're also going to do a normal map. So you can find patterns and stuff like this. You can make your own brushes. That's something that's really nice. You can actually make your own brushes in Photoshop. I made some fun ones here so that I can go in and make my shapes, whatever shapes that I like in here. Create a new layer, hide this one. Boom, boom, boom. Good to go. All right. I hope you enjoyed this series this week, and I look forward to seeing your work with bump maps next week. So I will see you next time.